Hi, good afternoon. Just coming to you this afternoon to have a quick chat to you about optimism, positivity, and self talk. So, this morning I was with my daughter and she was doing a little bit of work on social emotional learning, and she was showing me some of the things she had to do, and she had to write a positive an example of positive self-talk for a couple of different fictional scenarios, and we were chatting about what kinds of things she might be able to write for these. And one of the things that she was kind of coming up with, I think one of the examples was about missing out on a big kind of end of year event after having an injury, and what you might say to yourself in that kind of scenario. And certainly, disappointment and not being able to do things is something that I think kids have definitely had some experience with this year. So we're talking about what kind of things might you say to yourself. I was suggesting that she imagine the kinds of things that perhaps a good friend she'd like to hear from them, and that can be kind of a guide with what kind of positive self-talk can be kind of helpful. But one of the things I wanted to be really clear with her about, and certainly when I talk about having positive self-talk, I don't even often use the word positive self-talk. I usually use the word helpful, like helpful versus unhelpful self-talk. But one of the things we were saying was that being really mindful that when we're talking to ourselves or trying to develop some positive self-talk, be mindful that we don't discount the very real and very valid not so positive emotions or thoughts that might be triggered by a really awful event, like something that you've hugely been looking forward to being cancelled, or being unable to do something, or having an injury that wipes you out from being able to play a sport or do an activity that you love. So one of the things we were talking about was that having a sense of optimism and having a balance in your thinking means really being mindful and validating the not so positive emotions, disappointment, frustration, anger that might be triggered by that. And certainly that's the tact that we talk about in emotion coaching, which is not something my daughter of course is learning in grade 6 social emotional learning, but I just said be really mindful that we don't discount even our own negative emotions when something distressing happens to us, or annoying or frustrating. But then there's that next step. Once we validate that, once we acknowledge that it's okay to have those frustrations and negative thoughts and things, that we can perhaps then move on to, okay, is there another way, or is there a more balanced way of thinking that will help me get through this moment, and that I can generate some more positive outlooks on things, and then I can problem solve what to do from there. So we were having this sort of discussion, and I think it got me thinking about that tendency to, if we're too flippant, if we're too easy to just jump into do some positive self-talk, we will overlook or perhaps move into that toxic positivity kind of realm where there's only room for positive emotions. And I think that's equally dangerous as having feelings of hopelessness and helplessness and depression and things like that. So just being mindful that, positive self-talk, for me anyway, is really about encouraging people to find a balance in our thinking. If our thinking tends to be catastrophic, if we tend to be thinking in it's all doom and gloom, then we need to try and find a way to balance that back out again, and looking for possibilities, looking for actions that we can take that help us generate a bit of control about our what we might do going forwards. So just being mindful of that tendency. If we're wanting people to look on the bright side, if we're wanting people to take another more positive stance on things, because we know there's lots of benefits with being optimistic and having that brighter outlook, but be mindful of not rushing to that, because what that can do is discount that it's it's not okay to have disappointment, not okay to feel worried and feel sad about things, and that's not a healthy way of coping with emotions either. We want to be saying all emotions are okay. It's then what we choose to do with those. Do we sit with those unhappy emotions for a little while? Do we want to find ways to move through those or take action that might help us be in a better space, in a better sense? But rushing through that, just trying to discount or replace all negative emotions is not what we're going for at all. So just thought that was sort of interesting. It's so interesting for me to see some of the things that are being taught, obviously, in social emotional learning at schools. And you know, obviously I get really excited about it, and my perspective on it is going to be slightly different, just because, you know, it's not as simple as just replacing our thoughts with positive thoughts. If we don't have a fuller understanding that all emotions and all thoughts are okay, some have the tendency to help propel us in more proactive ways. But being mindful, if we're going to use that kind of tactic of thinking positive thoughts, that we're really acknowledging the not so positive thoughts, acknowledging the disappointment, the anxiety, the sad emotions, because they're okay as well. And particularly in the climate that we have now, I think it's really important that we talk about this kind of thing with our kids, in terms of saying, you know, all the what you're feeling, all the disappointments or all the change or anything like that that's been experienced is absolutely okay. And once we have that acknowledged, there's much more room to be able to say, you know, but do we want to do something about it, or is there anything else that we can do about it? Because there is a lot we can do, a lot we can control, and that is like our thinking, and that is taking action by doing things that make us feel better. You know, going out and getting movement, going and watching something funny, being in nature, all kinds of things, and all kinds of self-talk can be sort of propelling us that way. So just thought I'd come to you really quickly and just get you thinking about the use of self-talk or positive self-talk in your world, and what's your stance? How do you encourage your children, or how do you use self-talk yourself? Are you aware of the kinds of thoughts that pop into your mind? What's the kind of discussions that you have about it? It's a really important topic, I think. And again, I'm really excited that schools are teaching this kind of stuff, and it's a great opportunity for me to kind of chat about, you know, how self-talk, positive self-talk, how optimism, you know, is a useful tool and is something that we can develop as a skill as life goes on, and particularly now, you know, thinking about how we use it, and how, you know, practice makes that, you know, optimism muscle kind of stronger for us. So I hope you have a lovely Friday afternoon. It's got beautiful weather here this afternoon, and pretty soon I'm going to make sure that myself and my kids get out in it after they've finished their online remote learning for this afternoon. So thanks if you've watched me live, and I will talk to you next Friday afternoon. Take care.